Hello and welcome to another Sonic Lab. Today we're going to have a look at the Roto-Control from Melbourne Instruments. This is a new MIDI controller. It was first announced at NAMM, caused a bit of a stir, lots of people lurking around. And why is that, do you say? Well, actually what this has is the rotary encoder technology from the Melbourne Instruments synthesizers, which are these effectively are motorized. They're controlled by little drone motors which are highly accurate, and they have haptic feedback in them, much like the synthesizers. They start off just as rotary encoders, but you can configure them in many different ways. In fact, if I just go, well, actually before we do, let's take a look at the hardware. Nice solid case. We've got little LCDs in there. In this instance, we're showing all the modes. You've got MIDI mode, plug-in mode and mix mode. More on those a little later. Another little display here. If we flip it up this way, we can see we have MIDI in, out and through on full size jacks. Very nice to see that. Although there's no way to merge the incoming MIDI with the MIDI of the Melbourne Instruments controller output, which makes it a little bit more complicated to set up. I'm told this is going to be fixed straight away, so don't worry about that. I'm sure that'll be coming along soon. A pair of USB-C inputs. One will provide just USB and power, but if you need additional power, say you haven't got anything more than, I think it's 15 watts it requires, then you can power it from a separate source, so you can use both. I'm using both in here just because I didn't want to tax the computer interface too much, so I've got a separate power supply. So we've got these lovely, sort of very clacky, kind of old school keyboard buttons. They're like sort of NASA spaceship things. Each one's got its own different color behind it. You can set the colors for all of the business going on. In fact, what you can see here on the side there is the Roto-Control app, which you could download from Melbourne Instruments. I'm just going to plug this up so that we've got everything connected, because I've got some MIDI that I can show you. We'll just put that in there now. There we go, and put that back there. Yeah, lovely. So if I just go to, well, let's go to change the mode, go to system, then I'm going to go to, sorry, I am hitting the buttons quite hard, but it sort of feels like you should. Do you know what I mean? They've got that sort of vibe where you just kind of go clack, and it feels sort of solid. That's really neither here nor there. So I press the store demo. So I'm going to mix mode. This will show you now all the potentials for each of the knobs. So if I'm in mix mode, this is a normal knob. So you can see from having a fully rotatable knob, it's now actually got end stops. And this is done in sort of haptic feedback. This is down to the programming of the control of the motors, that the software is saying, I am a regular knob, so I start here and I end here. Makes sense. This one is a detented one, which means that in the middle, there's just a little sort of notch. So it might be used for panning, for instance. There's a 5-position switch, which has pre-programmed slots. And there is an actual sort of quite an audible, well, not audible, but you can feel the haptic feedback. There are definite clicks to that position. The 3-position switch. Then there's just an endless encoder, which goes all the way around. But it's got each time we go past, there's a little sort of indentation, and it goes click, 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 which is actually pretty cool. So if we now go to look at the software control, I'm just going to press and exit from this. We've got 3 different modes, as I said, MIDI, plug-in and mix. At the moment, MIDI control is sort of standalone, and the plug-in and mix are designed to be set up with Ableton Live. There are no other DAWs supported at the moment, but again, I think this is something that's going to be coming down the line. So if I just come back to mode and I press MIDI, we can select from 64 possible slots. Each slot will have the assignments for all of these controllers. Select setup 7. So now we've got an empty plot. So if I go to this shot here, you could see that I've got the microfreak connected to the MIDI in, MIDI out, just sort of straight through. So the out is going to the in, the in to the out. I've got this set up to transmit MIDI CCs. So let's just get a few things going. So we're in MIDI mode, we're in setup 7. I'm just going to go into learn mode. So I press learn, tap my knob, and let's have this one. Okay, we've got that one. Good. Let's go learn again. Tap this one. We'll have that one. Yeah. Learn again. Tap this one. Yeah. So we've got those 3 knobs mounted. Then let's do cut off. Why not? Everybody always does. And resonance, learnt. So now when I move those knobs, you can see that they're actually just return straight back. I mean, it's not very attractive. It's just auto. I've MIDI learnt it here. I could obviously set this up in a different way. So let's just do that now. So if I go to the Roto-Control, you can see that my basic setup is all there. Let's just sort of, we can change the background color. So let's have that to be red and have this one to be, you know, I don't know, pink or teal or whichever. We can name them. We can call this one, I think this was called knob 2, wasn't it? I think it was actually ended up being knob 2. We'll have that. And I think this one was cut off, wasn't it? So we'll say, call that cut off. And give it a colour of, I don't know, whatever, that one, that looks fine. But looking at these, you can see that we can only give them values of CC and NRPNs. Now, obviously with a MIDI controller, I mean, it's great to have as many possible message types as possible. Unfortunately, the Roto-Control is only starting with the bare minimum. I'd like to see, obviously, system-exclusive program changes, a real big one, and also key commands. Obviously, the Novation Launch Key Mark IV, you could do key commands as well. All of these things are really handy, and I'd like to see that expand. In fact, I've spoken to Melbourne, and they said they're on a list, and they will be updated in very soon firmware. They couldn't give me an exact date to that, but it's good to know that they're taking that on board already. We go back to the knobs. We can also set kind of like indents, and it will just automatically fill them up. Let's say there's another one at 100. So now, if I go to my knobs, I've got a little dent there, and another one here. I can feel these little dents. Or if I want, I can turn them into steps, which will give them, let's say, 64 and 100. Now, these are much more positive clicks. Click, 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 click. So we can have indents or clicks. It works out either way. For the buttons, we can also have steps in them. So, for instance, we can make this into a toggle. We could give it a number of steps. So let me just learn something new here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into learn mode. I'm going to press that one, and I'm going to let's just have it to be I'm going beat divisions. So it's picked that up. Cool. Come back to my main software. Let's just have we can have 1, 2. Let's give it 6 steps. 3. So now my button will toggle through 6 different steps. Unfortunately, the display doesn't update on the Arturia, but so if I would just press my sequencer. Now you can hear that is actually cycling through the different beat divisions, because that was essentially what I was doing. So all well and good, and in fact, while I keep going, my sequence, and I'm adjusting the other knobs. All well and good. Now the thing is with this is I've not only got these 8 knobs, but there are 4 pages, so we've got up to 32 controllers and 32 knobs that we can program in here, all with their own labels. But there's another little trick for this. If we press this button here, we end up in this record mode, and for each of these memory locations there's actually a little sort of looper, which is kind of cool. So I'm just going to clear this. So if we just go here, I'm just going to hit erase, make sure I erase all my controllers. What I can do is I can record these 8 knobs, the first 8 only, into this recorder. And if we go to function, we can have the internal clock, external clock. We can set the length up to 64. I'll keep it at 16 for now. Coming back here, so now I can, let me just do, if I'm in sync mode, because I've got these 2 synced up, I'm just going to get my ARP going, and I'm going to press record. Let's just see what happens. And I can record multiple ones of these. You know, I can have all sorts of movements. I can set them up so they're going backwards, forwards, random, and ping pong. Lots of different ways to have them running. The only thing I will say, there's no indicator as to where beat 1. This flashes, but if I go into record, I don't know how long it's going to record for. It's completely arbitrary. That's 16 steps, but I'm sort of punching in. I don't know when I'm punching in. It'd be really good if there was some visual display for beat 1, so it'd be much easier to sort of record a loop. But it's a nifty little function, isn't it? It's sort of something, and this is, you have one of these in every single location. So for each of the 64 MIDI slots, you can record a motion sequence. Nice. Okay, now we've had a look at MIDI mode, let's take a look at mix and plugin mode, which work at the moment only in Ableton Live. So I've got a session up here. I'm just going to go into mix mode, which shows me the individual tracks. I've got 3 tracks on this particular session. Before I go there, let's just take a look at how you set that up. Setting Roto-Control to be one of the control surfaces, and then enabling track sync and remote for both in and out gives you access to all of this stuff. So now if I just take a look at this, we're in mix mode. So now if you see, I can basically touch the knobs and they will automatically select the tracks that they're on. Pretty straightforward. Turning the knob gives me volume control because that's how I've got it set up for. I can press function and now that will give me volume, pan, send A, send B for an individual track. Coming back out just takes me back to track mode. Hitting select lets me set what the buttons and what the knobs do. So at the moment I've got it set to volume. If I set it to pan, then it basically will just adjust all the pans for each of those, or I'll go back to volume. Track select, I can have tracks on and off, solo or arm and record. I've chosen in this one to go for track on and off just purely because there's a little hack in the Ableton preferences which allows you to auto record ready the selected track. Well worth checking out. This one takes me straight to my drums, this one takes me to the bass, and this one takes me to another interesting swarm synth. So if I just come back here and I go to transport mode, we've also got all the transport controls here. So pressing play just gives you my soupy riff that I'm using. This is kind of interesting. I quite like it anyway. We'll stop that. So I now can go into plugin mode. Let's just grab a track. Let's take this and just drop this in here so that we've got just a very quick way to look at this. So if I now go to my wide setting, I've got nothing there. I could switch the device on and off. This would be listing all the devices that I had. So if I had compressors or other effects, I could switch them on and off individually. Coming back to it now, I can set it to learn mode. Let's press learn. Let's learn. I mean, we are going to do the obvious, aren't we? Every time. Frequency, that's learned. Yeah, of course, we'll do that. So now we have those guys. So yeah, that's all mapped nicely. But there's some other cool features as well. We can actually select multi-switches. So if I now go learn and I go on this guy, I've got learn. So I'll just check that, that's learned. And let's also do one for, I don't know, we've got filter types, haven't we, here somewhere? Let's learn this one and go filter types. So now I've learnt those and you can see that I can switch. These will now sort of rotate between all the different kinds, which is kind of neat that it just picks that up and it picks up the text from those. Really nice. I suppose where this is quite different to what you might expect from something, say, like Push or many other Ableton Live dedicated, there's no sort of, they're not pre-mapped. I guess they could be. I know that Lootpot mentioned that in his review that they'd spoken to them and they didn't want to sort of overpopulate it, but I think they probably could for maybe the Ableton devices, seeing as this is locked to Ableton only at this point. It would make sense. I think what they were going for is just not having all that many parameters, but we do have multiple pages, so we could actually have that. Incidentally, changing pages, I've got absolutely no idea which page I'm on. I wish there was just a sort of a page number indicator, so I just had a rough idea, but I could go to a few pages up and learn, say, this knob, attack, decay, sustain, and let's have release. So now I've got my envelopes on this page and I can adjust them as I want, and coming back a couple of pages I've got my filter and resonance. So it's entirely possible to set up. I think you can have up to 8 pages of this. So now that's mapped. Let's see, does that mean it's mapped? So if I add another instance over here, yeah, I'm pre-mapped. So it's remembered all of that stuff, which is actually cool. Let's just show how it works with third-party plugins as well. Okay, let's just take a look at the bass sound, which is this one. I'm going to map this, so we'll have to go into full screen. I'm just going to go into configure because as you can see here, there are no parameters listed. So I'm just going to hit configure. That will open up the window. I can now press configure again. It goes green. Let's have filter, cut off a res. Sorry to be so predictable, but it makes it a lot quicker. So now I've got those parameters there. I can now map them. So let's just go into learn mode. And I'm just going to wiggle, cut off, and resonance. Okay, I've learnt them. Not sure about those labels. I think I probably want to change those. So let's just go to the Roto app. We'll just call that one a res. There we go. So that's just a little bit more kind of, you know, I suppose the point is, you know, we can interact with it directly and we can also change it if we don't like the labels. It just gives us that option. So now I've got the ability just to, yeah, that wiggles. And indeed, I guess if I mouse these around as well, they're reflected. So we've got two-way communication. Okay, so let's just record a bit of automation there. I have to come back out of the... So now we have that reflected. That all works nice and good. A bit fiddly to kind of jump between these modes, but the automation recording is straightforward. Now, if I want to save that as a kind of default settings, I need to right click here and save as default configuration. And now when I load this again, I'll have those mappings. I think that's the case with any third-party plugins in Live. It's not particularly, you know, down to the Roto-Control, but just worth remembering once you've done all of that stuff, resave it so that it'll come back when you load that preset or that plugin again. So what do I think about the Roto-Control? It's a lovely piece of hardware. The idea of being able to use these drone motors and knobs as kind of haptic feedback with dents, detents and switches and end stops, it's genius actually, and it makes it way more than just a kind of box of faders, you know, because faders are generally just going to give you a centre-dent if anything else. That's assuming they're motorized. So a very flexible UI, lots of great screens, really like the feel of all the buttons and the hardware. So I think some of the things that I was hoping for in firmware look like they're going to be addressed in the next coming updates. I don't have a specific time frame, but it looks like reasonably soon. I had an email from David saying that there's going to be Bitwig integration, grouping of ungrouping tracks in mix mode, quick mapping of... In fact, Hold the Front Page just had an email in saying that they've added macro mapping. So in Ableton Live, if we just go to Live here, and I bring my screen up like this, I go into plugin mode. Now if I'm using well, if I go to mix mode and let's select this track, which is a really cool synth that I'm going to play along with my soupy beats, this has got, as you can see, a set of macros there. Actually, if I go to this screen, you can see that there's a set of macros there. Now if I go into plugin mode, you can see that they're already mapped. So I don't actually have to do that. Previously, in the previous firmware, I would have had to do these individually. This is actually a major step forward. And if you've got a load of sort of made instruments and racks which have macros, then this will automatically show up mapping wise. Obviously, you can edit those things. I believe also there will be a switch, not in this particular firmware, which can switch that behavior on and off in case that's maybe not what you want. But just a really sort of strong indicator that what's actually happening is they're moving quite fast on the firmware, they're adding things, so maybe the things that you want will be there sooner than you think. So it's around about £389 UK pounds. Other currencies will display. For a unit which has this much uniqueness, I suppose that you could say it's premium, but there's nothing else out there with these kind of knobs, and the fact that we can program them to give such Powerful haptic feedback. Also, the screens you can see from most angles, nice and bright, and I really like the feel of the buttons as well. It's the sort of controller that I imagine if you start to use it, you'll soon find you can't live without it. As soon as the firmware starts to mature, I think it's going to be a very powerful unit. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Wow.